and welcome to this session on ease of doing fintech in India. Throughout this week, as we have all attended different sessions as a part of the FinTech Festival, I think one common key takeaway perhaps is the critical role that FinTech will play in every country's journey towards inclusive economic growth. Now, this session focuses on how we can create a conducive ecosystem for FinTech companies to sustain and scale their businesses in India. Now, creating such an ecosystem is critical if countries want to tap onto the opportunities presented by fintech. Now, while investment in the fintech sector has seen a steady growth over the years, startups in the fintech space still face a number of issues and challenges. Issues relating to fundraising, regulatory barriers, competition from incumbents, customer acquisition, revenue traction, etc., are perhaps some of the issues that continuously play in the mind of a fintech founder. And of course, the pandemic has accentuated some of the challenges. Now, to discuss these challenges and also discuss how policies can address some of these issues, I am joined today by a distinguished panel of speakers who are actually working very closely with the several startups in the fintech space in India. Now, thank you all for joining us today. We will start with the opening remarks by our speakers, and then there are very specific issues that we will be discussing with our panelists. So without much ado, let's start with the opening remarks. Keeping in mind the timeline, I'll just request our speakers to perhaps keep the opening remarks to around 3 minutes. Suniti, I'll just start with you here. Would like to get your thoughts on the theme for today's session, and perhaps also you may touch upon how the pandemic has also impacted the sector as such.
Sure. Thanks, Shehnaz. So, very interesting topic. So, ease of doing fintech. So, let's really look at it that in our country, ease of doing business has been really, really high. So, thanks to the government, the last 5 to 7 years, the kind of changes that have happened. So, creating a business is really so easy nowadays. Now, if you just look at layering it up, what does it create to create a fintech? So, business you can create. Now, look at the kind of public infrastructure that we already have. So, whether you take a Aadhaar or you look at the UPI, you look at the kind of new framework that are actually coming through. So, if fintech need not have to think of laying any kind of rails, the rails are already out there. So, the scene has been really good to create things since I would say last decade has been really good, and last 5 years have been extremely good. Now comes the pandemic. So what has the pandemic done? If you really look at it, the fintech ecosystem, there was impact. It will not be right saying that there was no impact, but I think if we wear the optimistic lens, you will rather see that there are a lot of positive opportunities that actually came through it. We did see that there were few businesses which got closed down, but we did see that there was a huge up on digital payments. You look at the UPI transactions, a billion in a month is really a positive thing. You look at the numbers for our wealth investment transactions, suddenly it has gone up. The number of online trading accounts have gone up. While lending, the capital flow has been a problem, but if you really look at it, the need for lending is now, and looking at customers in a different way, assessing customers in a different way is now. So it's more the opportunities are more pertinent at this point in time, and during this pandemic that has actually all the more moved up. And if you really look at it from a incumbent financial institute ecosystem that had been there had been a lot of positive change in adopting newer solutions. So that has also worked very well for new fintechs, in a sense B2B, B2B2C kind of companies. So things that were not happening for a year or two, now suddenly we have seen that people are ready to implement solutions in months. So this will really go a longer way when it comes to life. So while all these positive opportunities are out there, definitely we as government regulators and a lot of ecosystem players do need to keep on boosting up in the best possible manner, and act as a catalyst in the best manner. I mean, while I'm wearing the hat of Mumbai Fintech Hub and the Fintech Officer for Government of Maharashtra, we do work on providing API sandbox, helping them with investor connects, with the fine platform that we have, helping them with access to the talent ecosystem, and bringing in the academic institute more closer to the fintech ecosystem, ensuring that the departments adopt a lot of fintech solutions. So those kind of holistic support we have been doing from Mumbai Fintech Hub standpoint, so that the fintech ecosystem can take the due advantage of the opportunities that has been portrayed from this pandemic. They come out of it and they go much beyond. That's how I would look at it, more as a positive scenario rather than saying it is a gloomy scenario as such.
Thank you, Suniti. Thank you actually for starting the conversation. Work with and work for us. This is also like a good segue to my next panelist here, Aastha. Aastha, for someone like you who's been working so closely with the startup ecosystem in India, can you share your thoughts on the session today, and also perhaps throw some light in terms of the impact of the pandemic from an investment climate point of view for startups?
Sure. Thank you so much, Shehnaz, for putting in the right questions. And I think Suniti set the right context for this entire session. In terms of highlighting how fintech has been critical to the economy, and how, just because the mere size of the population, because of some government initiatives around, the Jan Dhan Yojana, the Aadhaar, because of the internet penetration, the sector has got a great boost, right? So, over the last few years, we've seen that the fintech adoption in the country has definitely increased way beyond from, we were at about 50% to now about almost 90%, which is the highest globally as well. We've also seen how startups have emerged, in the fintech sector to operate different segments. And today, India has the second highest number of fintech startups funded in the last 5 years globally. As per our data, there are about 2,000 fintech startups which are currently operating in different spaces. Funding definitely, of course, has been affected, but fintech was one of the good sectors. The health tech startups, like the edtech startups, fintech also saw an uptake in terms of investments during COVID. In fact, we had one unicorn also coming during the pandemic. Razorpay became a unicorn. So that is the power of this sector. What we estimate is that the transaction value in the fintech space is expected to more than double over the next 3 years to about 140 billion. That will again, add to these opportunities for the startups. The investment climate, if you look at it, while we see that, March, the pandemic hit, May was the time when the investment dipped, and that was true for all the sectors. However, investors, angel investors, VC, everyone was looking more. I think the shift that I saw personally in the ecosystem was there was a shift from investments in sustainable businesses who could survive themselves, who had better cash run, than to mere profitable businesses. So I think being self-sustainable, being stronger, and creating more sustainable businesses is what everyone was looking forward. And everyone was, just waiting and watching on how this pandemic turns out. If you talk about, the drop in investments, while the number of deals were happening about 50 per month, it came down to 20. But during the second quarter, there has been a 50% uptake in investor activity since June, as compared to Q1 2020, because that was the time when investors realized that, this has to stay, but let's continue the activities. And there are so many mature startups coming in the ecosystem who have shown resilience, who have shown that, yes, they're doing great, and have found an opportunity in this pandemic to convert it into real life solutions. So there was a 50% uptake also in this activity. And if I talk about the present scenario, till June, it has more than doubled to USD 1,700 million. And while, it has gone down on a quarter-to-quarter basis, but there has already been a 130% year-on-year rise. This was actually as per a KPMG survey. I think the ecosystem has turned out to be much more resilient. The investors have become much more cautious of where they're investing. But fintech per se has been one sector which has been on the positive receiving end of this pandemic, and I think it will continue to remain so because of the drivers of the Indian ecosystem, because of more digital payments and transactions happening, because more of our local vendors coming, using the internet to do payments, because no one was now comfortable doing physical payments. So everyone moved to a cashless economy. Over billions of incentives were also given by the government digitally only during this pandemic. So I think all these factors will add to the fintech landscape, and we see that the startups will continue to support and provide more opportunities to the ecosystem.
Thank you, Aastha. I think this data is very helpful and also I think gives a very hopeful picture going ahead. Dr. Tyagi, I'd like to move on to you now. Could you share with us your opening remarks on today's theme, and how do you see government leveraging different partnerships through initiatives like FinBlue to create a conducive ecosystem for fintech startups?
Then it's probably
thank you, Shehnaz,
when you have some interest, perhaps
at the end of the Aastha and the Suniti both. So I have a lot of data now, and a lot of data have already been told now. So I mean, I would take forward where Suniti left, that the environment is very positive and there are very positive outcome of the COVID-19. And, let me talk about the industry and the, government collaboration first. The industry and government collaboration, the example which I can give you right now, and which is the best example in our country as far as the fintech domain is concerned, is this creating this foundational fintech stack in our country. This is the biggest example of the collaboration of the government and the industry. And we are having a this trusted digital identity in place. Platform is in place. We are having a trusted data and data exchange is in place. We are having a trusted interoperable payment system in place, and we are having a trusted consent layer in place. So all these 4 layers which has been developed, in association with the industry by the government, actually that is the major turnaround for the fintech startups in our country. And that is the point, that is the inflection point from where the startup has started growing in our country. This has not industry collaboration with the government is not the first time which has happened now, but we are seeing it for last 29 years. STPI have been involved with the industry collaboration for last 29 years, and the growth of the IT services has happened because of this collaboration, and which has resulted in 56% of the capturing of the whole market in the world as far as the services out job is concerned. So this is the collaboration in fintech. Also, we are looking ahead, and as far as the FinBlue is concerned, the whole objective of the FinBlue is to create an impact group, which will be consist of the investors, innovators, mentors, and the government stakeholders, and entire ecosystem together, so that we can support the financial services sector and the startup in fintech for addressing the very pressing challenges in the business and social as well. So that is the whole objective of setting up the FinBlue.
Thank you, Dr. Tyagi. I think our panelists have wonderfully set a very positive context for today's discussion. We have highlighted some important initiatives which will perhaps be important to shape the future of fintech sector in India. However, there are some specific issues that we will discuss with our speakers. Aastha, I wanted to start with you here. You work closely with startups. So in your experience, what do you think are some of the key challenges that startups usually face? And what do you think should be the policy priorities to address some of these challenges?
Thank you, Shehnaz. I have the fortunate to work with the startup ecosystem since the action plan was announced by the Prime Minister. So having been the founding member of the team and seeing the ecosystem grow leaps and bounds since the last 4.5 years when the policy impetus came from the government side, I'll tell you the challenges first and then what the government has been doing to address that, or what have been our priorities. First, I think I'll not even touch about funding right now because that's not the first challenge which a startup faces. In India, while there is a lot of talent, but getting the right team members, accepting entrepreneurship as a career option, instead of taking a job, that mindset of celebrating failure. So in India, we have about 40,000 startups at present, which are recognized by the Ministry of Commerce. Most of them are in ideation stage. But they are coming from tier 2, tier 3 cities. So this mindset change, right? When I started in 2016, there were only Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore that were the major hubs in India for startups. However, the trend has been, as per the vision of the Prime Minister, that there should be a startup coming from every block and every district. Today, 75% of the districts do have a startup, and 45% are coming from tier 1 and tier 2 cities. But these startups do not have an ecosystem there, right? Maharashtra is doing a wonderful job, not just with fintech, but otherwise for the entire ecosystem. So is Karnataka, Telangana, Kerala, and a lot of other states. But for a startup coming from a tier 2, tier 3 city, having the entire ecosystem together, having stakeholders around him, having the right set of advice is a key challenge for them. And it's not just about investors, just getting the right co-founder or a team member or a tech talent is a key challenge. The second, we personally believe that a startup should focus on its core job of doing a business. So the burden of compliances should be reduced for them. So, how do you make the first step is incorporation. My team personally took the exercise of incorporating a company ourselves, and step by step, we figured out the challenges or how it could be made easier. The recommendations were given to the ease of doing business team, and most of them have been accepted and will be implemented shortly. A lot of them have been implemented already. But the idea was that we step into those shoes, we do it ourselves, and we make a conducive environment for them. Over the last 4 years, specifically for startup, 39 regulatory reforms have been addressed, and these are across, be it around taxation, be it around setting up of company, be it about raising investments, be it allowing external commercial borrowing. So a lot of these a lot of these challenges have been addressed. The third challenge, if I talk about startup now coming to the funding stage, I think the gap I see in the ecosystem is at the risk stage, is at the seed stage, where not many investors are comfortable taking this risk, where they don't see startup as a new asset class to invest in. Thankfully, we do have a lot of government grants and schemes around this space, but this is the valley of death stage basically for startups, and we are addressing this by coming up with a new scheme. Not at a liberty to discuss much at this stage, but the next year we'll see a couple of more funding schemes also for the ecosystem, apart from the $1.4 billion fund of funds which was set up by the government specifically for startups, currently being managed by SIDBI, which is the Small Industrial Development Bank of India. So I think, these three key challenges is what I feel per se. But just addressing the first one, if I am a startup, when I started, we were a small team based out in Delhi. But how do I help a startup coming from a small town in Jodhpur or somewhere else? We developed a virtual network, which is the website. It acts as the largest virtual incubator in India today. So it's built in a gamification model where you can connect with mentors, incubators, basis your sector, basis your stage, and connect with them. So I think something similar Mr. Tyagi was also talking about, but having presence of these digital platforms, because thanks to the internet penetration, people do have access to internet, they just need the right resources and the right connect. So bringing all, we have a user community of about 4.5 lakh user with a monthly active user base of about 2.5 lakh users. So the portal is widely being used for information, for connections, and for participation in various programs, and that's how I think the ecosystem is being benefited.
Thank you, Aastha. I think thank you for highlighting some of the challenges. I think especially in terms of the challenges the startups in tier 2 and tier 3 cities that you have mentioned, and also for highlighting some of the initiatives that there are there. I'll also request our panelists, in case if they want to add anything to what Aastha said, please feel free to do that. In case otherwise, I'll just move on to Suniti here. Suniti Aastha kind of highlighted about some of the compliance requirements which are there. I want to actually discuss a little bit insofar as the role of regulations or laws in creating this conducive ecosystem for fintech is concerned. What are some of, according to you, what will be the role of regulations in creating this ecosystem? And what do you think are some of the regulatory reforms that will actually play a crucial role in the evolution of the fintech sector in India?
Right. So let me put it in this way, Shehnaz. So for sure, from a fintech ecosystem standpoint, like rather I would say, I'm proud to say that in India, there is enough ground and enough support to innovate. So the biggest and the best thing that can happen in a country is no one is trying to choke the innovation to start with, right? And that's a positive thing by itself. And again, just to put it in perspective, I'm a very optimistic person, so I rather look at it in as a glass half full rather than saying that the glass is half empty. So so if you really look at it from a fintech ecosystem standpoint, all our regulators, RBI, SEBI, IRDA, PFRDA, uh, all regulators have been forthcoming. I mean, they even though it took some time, but then now all of them are very, very upfront and are ready to experiment when it comes to trying out new innovation kind of a stuff, right? So they're bringing out the regulatory sandbox in last last 1.5 years. All the regulatory sandboxes are up and running, and I think IIDA has been doing a great job in having two cohorts of startups already working with them and stuff, and really seeing the outcomes. So this is like a starting point for our regulators to see things how it's working out, and that's the first step. So if you're getting into that phase, then the next step is more of so whenever they are experimenting with something, there is something more to that, right? So it's I have other plans to make a change, but then rather than going ahead and making a change, I first take the first step to experiment. And that's what is the welcome move that has happened from a regulatory movement standpoint. So so that's a key stakeholder which has moved forward from a new age innovation standpoint. Then the next key stakeholder when it comes to regulation and compliance is of course the government players, right? So and again, it's a combination of many entities: Government of India, state government, many other bodies. So now, if you see, thanks to the super active central government, day in and day out, we do see how the the corridors at Delhi is buzzing with the real interest of moving things forward. In a sense, the real interest of bringing out financial inclusion, not in terms of inclusion, but in terms of empowerment, right? So this is set the context that people have really the right intent to do things. Now, when you club these two things, then all the other elements that is needed from a change standpoint, from a regulation or compliance standpoint, will come through. Now, if you ask me, okay, what is that which might create a stir, which will definitely make a difference? So anything and everything that has been done so far is a change that has actually helped. Whether it is RBI giving away payment bank licenses, or RBI coming out and creating NBFC P2P license, or account aggregator framework. All these are positive changes which is got, and we'll see the real outcome in coming days. Account aggregator is such a great framework, and we are in the very nascent stage at this point in time. But it's all about time when all these things get implemented, so we can actually see the future coming through in the right manner. So having this foundation been set, and the movement is happening well, there are a few things that will definitely bring in a lot of change. And I mean, I'll probably highlight two things here. One is while a lot of work is happening from a data standpoint, I think this is high time that we really look at or bring in a mandate, whether it's a change in law or it's a new regulation with a particular entity. If we start getting used to or getting a go ahead to use multiple alternate data sets that are out there, that will help us in taking forward the overall whether you want to improve access to credit. Now, how do you do that when there are so many people who are not in that fold? There are so many people, the last billion that we're talking about, how do we bring them into this? And there is no miracle that can just happen that a credit bureau will just come up with a score just like that, right? We have to look at multiple data sets. And there's a lot of alternate data that is there in market. A lot of it, government is having a good hold on those kind of data sets. So I know there are already discussions that's happening, but I can see that like the moment when we can open or get access to those alternate data sources, it will be game changing for the overall fintech ecosystem, because that's the data that which will actually make people create multiple things, better solutions and different products that can actually be created. Second is, while again related to data, but I believe like from a law standpoint, open API, open data, all this stuff is out there, but we don't have the real mandate that a large financial institute has to share APIs with the tech solutions. That mandate is not there. You go to Europe or UK, and then the mandate actually changed the whole horizon. So while account aggregator framework might take to that level, but a fixed mandate might actually give in that the final boost. Now you club that to a, let's say, and again I'm just thinking aloud, club that with a change in, or like a guideline or a rule that government can come up where they will say that okay, you have to adopt technical solutions. Let's say 1% of your expense should be new adoption. That will give a different boost, and this will not just like from a fintech standpoint, but this boost will be across any startup solution adoption. If you just help that, then it's more everybody will be really looking at how we start working with them. So these are small nudges, but the overall outcome could be bigger. So that's how I would actually put it from a a change in standpoint, keeping the time duration in mind. Probably I'll not go beyond. Anyone wants to add anything, we're happy to hear.
Thank you, Suniti. I think I agree with you in terms of, I think, the potential that alternative data will have for us insofar as the evolution of the fintech sector is concerned. And I do echo your sentiments that currently I think the financial regulators have come up with several regulations, initiatives, whether it's a regulatory sandbox, whether account aggregators, which will definitely play an important role. I think time will tell us in terms of how India is able to leverage these regulatory frameworks for the benefit of the fintech sector as well as the financial inclusion. Dr. Tyagi, I turn to you here. Aastha and Suniti focused on some of the challenges that the sector is facing and what should be some priorities, perhaps from a policy perspective. However, given the impact of the pandemic on the fintech sector in general, I also wanted to kind of understand from you, based on your experience, going forward, what will be some critical areas that startups in the fintech sector will have to focus on in terms of perhaps business strategy, things like that?
Thank you, Shehnaz. And so I mean, as far as the impact of the COVID is concerned, I just wanted to take it further. That as Suniti said, that the government comes and tells that this is the regulation, and then we are easing this regulation, and that encouragement will give to the entrepreneur to come forward and do something. But that is something which has reversed. This COVID phenomena had reversed entire thing. We were doing it for last 5-7 years. Digital India push have started in 2015. So we're good 5 years we are trying to push the digital over here. But then with this COVID push, suddenly all these fence sitters who are thinking that whether they should move on their digital journey ahead in this in this environment or not, they have actually now started embarking upon their digital journey, and enterprise digitalization has started happening. I'm talking about the industry perspective, and the digital adoption rate just have been told that has gone more than 90% in this time. It was 87% probably in March, and it has rose to 90% now. And we are the second largest, which is the second largest data. After the China, probably we are number 2 as far as the digital adoption rate is concerned. So there is a greater impact on this whole process, which we are trying to, encourage the enterprises and the common citizen by doing so many regulatory, ease of doing business, bringing a lot of changes into this in this whole sector. But suddenly this has changed. Now, which are the domains which are, got benefited? All those domains which were very easily able to onboard their customer remotely through the eKYC or through digital identity, they were actually definitely benefited by this. And payment, lending, wealth tech, these are the domain, insurtech as well. These are the four domain which has actually seen biggest growth in this time. Lending probably have little bit suffered, but I think this is the requirement is have actually increased multifold. So as far as the opportunity is concerned, and as far as the strategy in pivoting in this time is concerned, probably now the time has gone when we used to create a megalithic software applications in the fintech, and we used to sell as a product. Now the time has come when a high class fintech will come with a software vendor and very quickly create a microservices applications for a small enterprise. So that is the way ahead when we have to help all these 6 lakh enterprises which we have in India, and we have to. This is the golden opportunity for all of us to bring them to the to the formal sector. We can make them now formal, which was why so many regulatory ease of the business is being done in last 5 years in this country. So this is one of the golden opportunity for the techie people to go and help them, because now they are looking towards you. They want to be included into the mainstream, and they want to reach out to their customer. So small business digital transformation has to happen in B2B space as well as B2C space. Both are hugely suitable to our environment in our country. And as far as the mantra in pivoting in this whole time is concerned, and probably in COVID and after COVID, post COVID as well, is the cost takeout and the acceleration to digital. That is going to be mantra for in this decade for all the enterprises.
Sure. Thank you so much, Dr. Tyagi. I think perhaps also, as you correctly pointed out, one of the key takeaways from the pandemic has been how it has accentuated the role of digital technologies, and how the same can actually be now leveraged to help a sector like MSMEs or small industries to actually face the informalization that they have been going through for several years. So I'd like to now actually take a couple of some more issues with our panelists here. I'll start with basically Aastha here, Suniti here. Suniti, we have spoken about challenges here. We've talked about regulatory barriers, and of course, the government of India has taken several initiatives. We've all spoken about it. But there are also state-specific initiatives, whether it is in the state of Maharashtra, Karnataka seems to be, or Chennai. These are states which are taking up initiatives to promote innovation as well as startups ecosystems. Now, as a part of given that you're a part of the Mumbai FinTech Hub, I wanted to kind of get your sense in terms of some of the key areas where state governments can play a role in promoting the FinTech ecosystem.
Right. So, Shehnaz, let me put it in this way. Our country is very complex. I think we all know that, right? So while the central government is very active in bringing out many things, this is a reality that the key role that state government actually plays in, they are the implementers. So if a state government is not active, forget about we reaching out to the last mile. That is not possible at all. So I mean, and this is something I have, like in my interaction with many other states also, people always ask me, do we really need to look at this fintech sector very specifically, where anyway is doing startups? So that's where there's a thought process gap that is out there. And if you can really just think of it as a state government, whether it is giving away all farmer benefits or livelihood benefits, whether it is the smallest of the village ensuring that they get the banking access, who does all these things? This is ultimately it falls under the state government, that you have to do it. Now what happens is, many times multiple benefit schemes, it flows down, right? Central government will put in X amount of this budget, and then it will come to Y, and then the state government then follows central government guidelines, and let's say DBT schemes and your this farm loan waiver schemes, these things happen. And now that lot of people start doing it through a tech way. But just think of it now. Let's pick up Maharashtra as an example. So everything is in play. Aadhaar is in play, UPI is in play, large financial institutes are in play. Now things like Jan Dhan accounts are out there, mobile connections are out there. Can we say that like in this state, everyone who is out there have the right access to credit? Do they know how to save for their future? Are they covered? Are they covered for a bad time that will come through? Look at the farmer suicides that are happening in the state. What is not happening? What is that is something that we are not able to do. That's the gap, and that's the gap not for this for Maharashtra state only. It is for any state, and that is where the moment when we look at that gap, the action items are very clear. So there's a simple action item that I have to really, so as government I would say a representative, the way I would look at it is, so this gap is actually the opportunity where the state government need to really look at it, question the efficiency, and think of it that what more I can do to ensure that this last mile persona gets the real benefit of it. So my job doesn't end by just ensuring that the money goes into that person's account. My job will actually start that can I empower this person? Can this person move to the next level? Now I can have a mandate where this person has gone through the financial literacy program as a tick mark or not. But has that person got the real access to a savings product? Has the person got real access to credit? Is the next level where government actually has to work with the fintech ecosystem. And when I'm saying work, this is actually real collaboration with the fintech ecosystem. Let's take an example just to make it clear. So let's say this startup called Jai Kisan, you would be knowing that let's say agri fintech startup. They actually give out loans more from an input financing perspective to the farmers. So now, Jai Kisan, of course, is a mediator. They have multiple NBFCs backing it, but then they are giving out loan to whom? Farmers. Now, who has the maximum access to farmers? Government has maximum access to farmers. There are so many FPOs who are more connected with a government person or a district collector who is out there. They are the people who are more connected with this. So if you really think of it, a small collaboration between the government representatives and this small tech startup can actually make wonders, because this is all about access. I mean, if this company need to reach to the right people so that they can actually help these people get access, right? So because a smaller entity cannot just stand there and go and say that, okay, now we have this reach. So this is a different way of thinking. Similarly, you think of the livelihood mission. Now livelihood mission has access to so many SHGs that are out there. Now SHGs need to really look at and think of it how they can help these people to think of different kind of product to save for their future. So come out of this BC model that they have been doing since long. Now how that can happen? So there are some of these tech players who are creating solutions. But if you really look at it, many of our entrepreneurs, they even don't know how the reality looks like when it comes to a small village. So who can play the role of this connector? State government is rightly placed to work as the connector. And that is where this focused programs to work with tech solution, be open to work with these tech solutions, experiment it, adopt it, sometimes just act as a mediator, sometimes you might have to integrate with the solutions and bring them to play. So these are few areas that I can think of. Plus, what I was telling you is from a data standpoint, what are alternate data I was saying. Now, a lot of this data actually state government is sitting on. So there's a lot of data that whether it is electricity related or this municipality tax related, or it is DBT related, whatever stuff is happening. Now, state government is kind of the protector of this data. So a state government has no dependency on central government. Rather, they are free to really start experimenting with the data set that they are sitting on. So, that's in that direction from a government of Maharashtra standpoint, the API sandbox that I was telling you. like that we actually had created. The thought is there, so we are actually working with departments, convincing them that okay, let's create a API on top of these data sets. We are not exposing the data, we're just creating a API which could be a yes and no call, but then that yes and no call can help the fintech ecosystem to create products for the last mile. That will be game changing, and that is why I believe that every state has a very strong role to play when it comes to fintech ecosystem. Sorry for the long answer.
Yes. Thank you, Suniti. I think I completely agree with you insofar as the critical role of the state government insofar as digital financial inclusion is concerned in reaching out to the last mile. We have around 5 minutes left, so I'll quickly kind of get to my other two panelists here. Aastha, Suniti talked about the role of the state government here, but I wanted to also kind of get your thoughts on cross-border possibilities. And the reason why where I'm coming from is that globally we see many fintech players which have expanded their operation in other jurisdictions. So how are Indian startups faring in this? And are there government initiatives which will be instrumental for startups actually to foster collaboration with their counterparts in other jurisdictions?
Sure. Thank you so much, Shehnaz and Suniti. Loved, your answer, and actually I agree and echo the same sentiment that yes, center and state have to work together. The impetus has to be a lot on the state to drive this, and more collaboration and partnerships should happen. We try and do this at a policy level as well through the state ranking framework, encouraging states to take policy measures and taking responses from beneficiaries. But there's a long way to go still. To answer your question, Shehnaz, on the international front, what Startup India has done is that we have about 11 countries with which we have an international bridge. Now, what an international bridge actually means is it's a soft landing platform between India and the host country, where we have one partner identified from that country, and for India, Invest India, Startup India Hub acts as the nodal point. What we do is we talk about the regulations in that nation. If I am a startup in India and I have to set up in Japan or Singapore, what visa requirements, what regulation, what entity type I should form. It will tell me about that ecosystem, who should be my first point of contact to navigate that, what are the sector specific policies, and how can I foster partnerships. So to put this in perspective, we have an India-Japan bridge also. We have Jetro as a partner in Japan. Now, when any startup says I'm looking to expand to Japan, Jetro gives them, a template, and they says that give us this information. We will help you navigate that market. We will connect you with the right partners, and we will help you take this forward. So this bridge with 11 countries, some of them were actually inaugurated by the Honorable Prime Minister himself, are doing well for us in terms of international market access. Another thing which we try and do is that how would Indian startup know about the opportunities outside, right? There is every year we take them to these marquee international festivals, highlight the best of the innovations to the world out there, and provide them opportunity for showcase and pitching. So, be it Slush, Web Summit, Singapore FinTech Festival, given that this is happening virtual this year, every year we showcase startups, and I'm happy to share that 1/3 are always women beneficiaries about them. So we give them these opportunities as well. And that's how I think startups are able to manage this. In the interest of time, I'll end here, and Shehnaz, over to you.
Thank you, Aastha. We just have like 1 or 2 minutes, so I'll give the last word to Dr. Tyagi here. Dr. Tyagi, just wanted to kind of quickly, if you can give us your thoughts on, we have seen various incubator programs being run by the state, by the government, as well as private sector. So perhaps if you can tell us what are some of the focus areas that these incubators should focus on, and would love to hear your thoughts on this.
So one-liner, if you ask me, I agree with Aastha and Suniti both, and the state government, we have to work very closely with the state government, and it is the state government which is the biggest stakeholder into this. And as a government of India, we would like to act as a facilitator, and we are creating this FinBlue environment in a very holistic way. And, we are trying to interact with the entire ecosystem so that we can understand their requirement, and all this cross-border, transactions, we would like to, as far as the technology is concerned, we are to facilitate the startups to get connected with them. And we feel that government should always restrict themselves to the facilitation part only, and we will create all that sandbox environment for creating the best of the deep tech fintech startups in our country. And then we will be able to interface them with the state government and other regulatory bodies for whatever the whatever the barriers they have, and we would try to remove those barriers for them.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tyagi. With this, we come to the end of today's session. I thank my panelists for sharing their thoughts on some critical issues to create a conducive business climate for FinTech here. Going forward, as we all deliberate on the role of FinTech, I believe this key takeaways from this session will be instrumental to actually facilitate the ease of doing FinTech in India. Thank you, everyone, for having us. Ahmed, over to you. Thank you all. Thank you all for joining us. Stay safe, everyone.
Thank you, Shehnaz.
Thank you very much.
Shehnaz, for moderating us so well.
Absolutely fantastic. Thank you.